participants has the same prompts, and then they'll be secretly put back in the envelope in between. This is the only event where we ask that once you're in here, that you must stay until the very end. So this would be a great chance to run for the toilet if you need to. That was supposed to be funny. Okay. But it is strict in the guidelines that you'll have to stay once the event starts through all 6 of the participants. Check one more time to make sure that your cell phones are in the silent mode or in airplane mode. And let the games begin.
Judges ready? Knowledge scratched away my beliefs. I grew up in a Catholic family where I adhered to Catholic beliefs. There was a holy tree just 5 blocks away from my house. And whenever I was uncertain or whenever the going got tough, I would pray to it because it was a source of certainty for me. I believed that coins found on the street were a sign of the Virgin Mary. My beliefs were a source of hope and a source of certainty. But knowledge scratched that. Because you see, when I began to pursue knowledge in history, in cultures, I began to question. And when I began to question, the certainty of my beliefs destabilized. I began to ask, why do I believe what I believe in? Are my beliefs merely an illusion that provide the image of hope? And just like that, as I dissected what I believed in, as I asked why and why and why, my beliefs were scratched away, and I was left with an emptiness that I really can't quite describe. It's not depression, it's an emptiness. The emptiness of disbelief, an emptiness that resulted from the scratching away of my ideology. You see, we tell people to pursue knowledge, to pursue understanding. It's an ideal that we hold close to heart, but we don't realize the dangers it brings to us and to others. I mean, psychology reports have revealed that right before a person's death, they will cling to their beliefs. There's no scratching them away from them. Because before death, you're faced with the reality of uncertainty. And it is then that the beliefs are so firm. That's the power of a belief. It can't be scratched away. But knowledge does. It brings forth emptiness. But you see, knowledge doesn't just harm us. It harms those in power. I mean, there's a reason why Socrates was murdered and forced to commit suicide. This was in time in Greece when people clung to tradition. They were enslaved to the chains of tradition. And the scratching away of this through knowledge was seen as dangerous. So when Socrates encouraged the art of questioning, he was killed because the political leaders at the time wanted to remain in power. But in this we see that knowledge can scratch away a belief. And those who use this belief to remain in power, well, it can scratch away them. There must be a reason why Qin Shi Huangdi burned books that were seen as controversial or as diametrically opposing his authority. There is a reason why Mao Zedong did the same thing. Because knowledge scratches away belief. And this belief is not only a source of certainty for the ones who believe in them, but a source of legitimacy for the ones who promote them. Now, I'm sure many of us are not on the path to overthrow a government. So, it's not really a big deal to us. But what is a big deal is what the scratching away of beliefs through knowledge and understanding does to us. Or at least what it did to me. I lost my faith. My faith was scratched away. I lost my certainty. My certainty was scratched away. Suddenly, yes, I was in a world of understanding, but I was also confronted with a world divested of hopes and illusions. My happiness was scratched away, and it was never returned to me because knowledge took the place of belief. Thank you.
let me tell you the story of a young boy, pale of skin, dark of hair, dark of eyes, and a bit of a dark of heart. He would scratch and scratch and scratch, his fingernails inundated with blood and grime and gore. For he looked for something that you could never find on a person's skin. It was no mole, no scar, no birthmark. It was his fears, his self-esteem, the very essence of his doubts. He would scratch and scratch like a cat in heat looking for something beneath the surface of his skin. They lie here and here and here. Their lines are pale. They are filled with pain and suffering. You probably know that this is me, as you can tell. And for a very, very long time, I have suffered with the idea of myself, of who I am. I used to think it was because I was some misbegotten abomination, birthed to error and sin. It was clinical depression. When I found that out, I found some succor in these pains, in this scratching that I pulled upon myself. But it did not abate. I still scratched. I still searched for the reason for my existence, for the reason for my pain. And then one day, one simple day, it was no day like sunny or rainy. It was but a day with trees and birds and wind. I looked in the mirror. I was shirtless. Wow. And I reached out as if to caress my own face. It was poetic almost. As if I were to scratch my own nose, I moved. And I said a single word to myself. Beauty. Now you may laugh, you may think that is odd for a man to call himself beautiful. But that is what I'd been looking for. A reason to be beautiful, a reason to be loved. I had scratched at the epidermis, at the bone and marrow, to find beauty in myself. And the people around me, my friends, I knew in that instant when I went to school, they also looked for beauty. They also scratched for beauty. So this might be a speech for a competition. This might be a speech for a gold medal. This might be a speech for a school. But more than anything, this is a speech. This is a message. These are my tears and tattoos to you. If you scratch like I do, if you scratched like I did, stop. It is in the absence of want that we find things. It was in the absence of wanting to be something that I was something, that I was myself. And if you need a little pick-me-up, if you need a little help to stop the scratching, I will always find you beautiful. I may not know you. I don't know who the hell you are. But I look at you and I know you are a beautiful person. You have words and thoughts and creations that are so amazing. And you too, sir. You sitting there. I believe that you are beautiful as well. I know you're beautiful, Shane. Don't scratch. Let it be. And in the absence, perhaps you will be like me and find beauty in self. Thank you.
My mind right now is blank. It's a condition that happens quite often in these competitions. And yet, all there seems to do in situations like this is to start from scratch. For your information, I don't have anything written much on my paper, but what I do have is crumbs of ideas that I can bring up to build something greater. Because throughout history, it's filled with people who have viewed the aspirations of others and said that it cannot be done. But in reality, true accomplishment has only come to those who have viewed their own goals and said that yes, it can be done. So today, I'm going to be talking about a few people who had to start from scratch and ultimately were better off for it. Some of them are not people, and my first one is actually the northeastern snapping turtle. So if you know anything about this species, you'd know that they have a 95% infant mortality rate. In a sense, 95 out of every 100 eggs they lay ends up dying due to predators. When I was in preschool, we had a sandbox in our garden. And every spring, we would have to vacate that area because the danger of a snapping turtle was simply too great to bear. See, in realizing that most of their eggs would die, the snapping turtle realized they had to start from scratch. They had to go back to square one. They had to rethink how they were going to give birth. So they did it in the sandbox. They were able to take this situation and morph it into one that was advantageous to them because they recognized that they had to start from scratch. And because of that, almost all of their eggs survived to hatching. They were able to counteract the forces of nature because they realized when they had to start from scratch. They didn't arbitrarily resist this urge. They went for it. And another person who went for it, they knew they had to start from scratch and achieved great success because of it, is a man named Richard Fastbury. Now, if you know anything about the Olympics high jump, you would know that it is an incredibly hard event in any case for anyone to do, and especially for Richard Fastbury. See, he was never actually able to jump over the high jump bar. But what he did is he realized that it was never something he could learn to do. It was a limitation in his athletic ability. So what he did is he became the first person to jump over that bar backwards. He recognized that the tides of his own physical appearance limited him from doing it the traditional way. So he went back to square one. He started from scratch. He developed a new technique for jumping over this high jump bar, and if I'm not mistaken, he won a gold medal because of it. So what we find in the case of Richard Fastbury is he was able to counteract the forces of nature by starting from scratch. And the last person who started from scratch, and perhaps we're all better off because of it, is my own father. See, my father is a terrible driver. And I'm sure he would not appreciate me saying this, but I recall him telling me as a child that he had so many speeding tickets as a professional in his mid-40s, just racing on his way to work, that they made him go back to driver's school. So here you have my father in a suit with his advanced degrees with a high schooler in a sweatshirt, learning to drive, both of them, both starting from scratch. And eventually, my father graduated driving school, and we are all very, very proud of him, but in the end, what matters is that my father had to start from scratch. He was a danger to society. I am sorry, Dad, but he was a danger to society. So by starting from scratch, he was not only able to make his own life better, he was able to forge connections with people he would never meet otherwise. And he never, ever ran over someone. So in the end, what made my father a great driver was the fact that he had to start from scratch. He was never a good driver, and he was never gonna be a good driver. So they made him go back to square one. They made him relearn the basics. They made him counteract this force of nature, compelling him to speed, always. So what we learned from all of these, whether it be the northeastern snapping turtle's egg-laying habits, whether it be Richard Fastbury and his high jump extraordinaire, or whether it be my own father learning to drive again, what we find is that time and time again, the only way that we can overcome the physical limitations we face, the only way that we can counteract the forces of nature that seek to malign us and push us down is to start from scratch. Thank you.
Hello. I was just waiting anxiously outside to enter this room and speak to a crowd of people that I do not know, and I am frankly quite terrified. But as I was outside, one of my teammates said something, and we, as millennials, use the word triggered to describe how I felt when he said this, because he said, "Oh, I just knew you were one of the twins until you made finals." And at this point, I wanted to say, for your information, I'm not just a twin, I'm an individual, and I'm not defined by my relationship with somebody else. Now the thing is, this is so simple for other people to do because we're twins, and yes, it's easier, it's one syllable and you can say it and it slides right off your tongue. However, the reality is I'm much more than just a twin. And for everyone out there wondering who I am, I hope that through this speech, you might learn a few things. Now, firstly, I'm going to be talking about the Women's March, as well as just the plight for suffrage, actually more suffrage. Because for your information, females are not in any way inferior to males. And I like to think that they made this so clear beginning in 1848 with Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony at the Niagara Falls Convention when they're there and they're talking about the equal rights that women are supposed to have, but they didn't at the time. And they're talking about this, and even though other people were oppressing them, and even though the rest of society felt like women were not on the same playing field as men, they still fought for what they believed in, and they wanted to get ahead. And I realized this materialized with Alice Paul in 1920 when she's outside of the White House starving herself for the rights that women have. Now, she told everyone watching, she said, "For your information, females should be on the same level as males." And that's something that reverberated throughout a nation, something that I hold dear to my heart, because it's when other people underestimate you. It's when other people think that they're better than you, and when you put them in their place and you say, "For your information, we're equal." Moving on to another powerful lady, I would like to talk about Sylvia Plath and how her writing has transcended the way we look at poetry. Now, through her confessional work, through things such as Daddy and Lady Lazarus with biting tone, she manages to put people in their place and say, "For your information." She also did this through her autobiographical work, The Bell Jar, in which she exposes herself so vulnerably yet so beautifully because she's putting everyone in their place, people that saw her as mentally depressed, and she was for a long time, but she owns up to this and she says, "Yes, I am suffering, and yes, I've gone through various suicide attempts, actually." And she writes about this openly and welcomes people criticizing her, yet she does it and says, "For your information, I've survived, and these are the reasons for which I will thrive." And she does this so beautifully through all of her work, and it's something to me that I hold so close to me. And it's when those people are powerful enough to say, "For your information," that's when they become so poignant. Lastly, I am beginning a club in my school called Girl Talk, and I think you're starting to get the gist. I'm quite a feminist, and go powerful ladies. And so I started this club called Girl Talk. And at first, the membership wasn't great, and in fact, one of my friends said, "Oh, my father references to this club as the Nerd Club, or the club for girls with problems." However, honestly, to this point, I said, "You know what, for your information, this club is run by girls, for girls, and it's about really getting to the root of their problems and being able to talk things out." See, the thing is, girls go through so many things, and that's not to say that guys don't go through many things, but I think the fact that these girls sometimes feel like they can't talk about things, it's more important to just say, "You know what, for your information, this club deserves the attention and deserves membership." And I realized this when someone came up to me and talked to me about their daughter and said that their daughter had struggled with anorexia, and that if only she had been in Girl Talk, maybe things would have been different. Maybe she wouldn't have fallen into that rabbit hole because she played the lead role in Alice in the Wonderland, and maybe, just maybe, she would have put people in their place and said, "You know what, for your information, I'm a strong, independent girl." So when people try to underestimate you, or when you're reduced to something as simple as a twin, I'd like to say to that, For your information, I am much more than just a word that proves pretty demeaning. Thank you.
It doesn't matter how many times you fall down. It only matters that you pick up after yourself after you fall down. So when we take this into account, when we think of this phrase, what does it mean? It means that when we fall, we are able to get better. What goes up must come down, but what comes down can also come up back again. It's a matter of perspective. The glass can be half full, half empty, but when you get a scratch, for example, you can get better. It's something that can heal. Not only physical wounds like your body, I have covered in scratches from falling because I am a klutz, but also in your mentality. For example, in this cultural convention, I've had a bunch of fours that were kind of, upsetting, but it only matters your mentality afterwards. You don't look at that four and think, wow, I'm really bad, I'm not gonna get better. You think, you know what, I'm gonna take this 4 and I'm gonna divide it by 4. That's what you should think. Okay, I'm also really terrible at math, so hopefully that totals to 1. Yes, it does. Okay, good. So what I'm talking about, the philosophy that I am discussing is just that you need to notice that these scratches are going to go away. They're not only going to be scars, they're going to get better. Just put a Band-Aid on it and it'll be fine. So now, instead of just relating it to this competition, I'm gonna relate it to a show that I binge-watched recently, Orange is the New Black. I hope that some of you also watch it. And this character called Miss Rosa. So now, Miss Rosa is an interesting character because she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And she is in Litchfield, this prison for unspeakable crimes that she did when she was younger. So she's serving a penalty for a crime that she did a long time ago. And really being incarcerated was kind of like a scratch on her life. And that on top of her illness, really she was in a dark place. Really, she knew that things weren't going to get better. But once she talked to another one of the characters and realized that scratches get better, she thought about this, and well, yes, she was in a pretty morbid situation that had an imminent end, but she decided to, well, not get better, but to live out her life to the fullest. She decided to take the van of the prison and drive it as fast as she could, and she escaped, and she decided to take that scratch in her life and not let it ruin her forever, to not let her be down or be morbid and have this dull atmosphere following her around wherever she went. She decided to take it and use it to justify her actions of escaping the prison with a van. Now, I'm not saying to do anything that will make you go into prison or to steal a car, because you wouldn't steal a car. We know that from watching movies. Yeah, it's funny. No, just kidding. So what I'm saying is that no matter what you might be in, something as small as a competition or as big as a federal prison, you can get better. Don't look at those scratches and think, oh, damn, I'm gonna fail. Look at them and think, you know what? I'm gonna wear it as a badge of honor. And I hate to bring up a little bit more of a morbid tone, but I can also apply this philosophy of getting better to the country that I live in, not just in a small scale prison or a competition, but also I am Venezuelan. And as many of you extempors might know, it is a failed state. But you know what? You know what? I believe that this could get better. The dictator Hugo Chavez that we have, that was just a scratch on our history. That was just a little, it's not funny, guys, you're hurting me. It's something that can get better. You know, it just takes time. It's going to take a lot of time, mind you, but it will get better. It's just a scratch. Yes, our opposition, the leader of the opposition is currently incarcerated, but Nelson Mandela spent about 20 years in prison before he left. And then he picked up his country back up again. And I think that that can happen to us. If we all have that mentality as Venezuelans, that it can get better if we don't lose hope and if we don't think that this scratch is going to be a scar ugly enough to blind us in our future, then I think that things can succeed. And just like Rosa did, she stole the van, we can also steal this, this kind of power that our current president has, our current dictator has. We don't have to look at it as a scratch. And we can look at it as something that can get better. We can look at it as something that can heal, because it doesn't matter how many times you fall down. You just have to pick yourself back up again. Thank you.
testing. Okay, wonderful. Back when standardized testing didn't count for anything, and I mean by this elementary school, as a Korean public school student, I really liked standardized testing. This was because there was a lot of information that you normally wouldn't have access to. And I guess this was the whole point of why people hated standardized testing in the first place, because they would give you obscure passages that you have to read and answer questions about. But I would really like them for that exact reason. For example, I was taking an international English test called the International English Test. Yeah, I think that was the official name, IET. Yeah, I was in 5th grade at the time going to Korean public school, and I still remember reading this one passage about the comparison of electricity used between ACs and fans. And it said that ACs consume 10 times more electricity than fans do. And the whole point of the passage was, okay, this is your information, so now that you have this, go do whatever you want with it. In that case, it was answer the questions, but I took it a little bit further, and I thought, interesting. So I guess since the prompt is for your information, this speech is going to be a little for your information speech. I'm going to list you 3 types of information that you will probably never need to know in your life, but that are interesting regardless, because I think that's the point of Impromptu in the first place. First of all, let me talk about octopi. So, for your information, octopi can think abstractly. Ooh. So this is me in 9th grade, World History 1. My teacher is talking about Neanderthals. Actually, I don't remember which type of ancient human it was. It was one of the 5 that I used to remember that in 9th grade. I was a hard worker back then, but as obviously I'm in the IB now, so I forgot all of that. Anyhow. It was, I think, the 4th or 5th human species. And then my teacher, Mr. Veneer, was talking so passionately about how they had acquired the skill to paint in the caves. And he said, this is possibly the most remarkably human development in the world. And I said, what? Because I thought, for example, development of the fire, development of languages, these were important because they directly impacted the way we live our lives. But cave paintings, like I respect Vincent van Gogh, but I really didn't understand that. And then he said, this illustrates the moment when humans proved that they could think abstractly. This is not humans looking at animals and thinking, okay, there's an animal, but rather looking at a cow painting and saying, that represents a cow. Now, octopi can do that. Sorry, Mr. Veneer, but I don't think that's any special anymore, because if octopi can, then, humans performing on the same level as octopi. Well, for your information, there was this one octopus that was on the ocean floor having a coconut shell on its head. And it was walking across the ocean floor. Now, scientists thought, what the heck is going on? And they looked into it, and turns out the octopus saw that, thought, I better camouflage myself there, because I'm going to be eaten. It's a barren ground. So it picked up the coconut shell, thought ahead, thought of that abstract concept of the future, and hid itself in a coconut shell. Isn't that cool? Probably information that you'll never need in your life, but for your information, octopi can think abstractly, as did humans like a million years ago. Second of all, I'm going to talk about starfish while we're on the subject of sea animals. Starfish have 5 legs. That's what they call starfish. Now, sorry, I guess that was really obvious, but for your information, they have 5 legs. And turns out, if you inject a computer chip inside any one of their legs and then you track the movement of that computer chip, they will try to move it across one of its legs. So pretend I was starfish for the sake of understanding, and you just put a computer chip inside me. For your information, the chip will travel towards one of my legs, and I'm going to try to spit it out of that corner. That doesn't work, I'm going to suck it back into my corner, move it to another leg, and try that with all 5 legs until it goes out. Isn't that crazy? See, information that you'll probably never need in your life, but for your information, starfish can use any of their 5 legs as their mouths or buttholes, I guess. Sorry. Profanity. Lastly, so I guess these informations that you hear about, you think you're never going to use them, right? But I just proved you all wrong right there, didn't I? I took all those years of standardized testing, and yes, these informations were in fact gathered from taking the SAT like 5 times. It was tough, but at least I gathered that information. So, for your information, octopi can think abstractly. Humans did as well, and they were pretty important a couple million years ago. I don't think they are that important anymore. And then thirdly, starfish can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So next time you come across a piece of information that doesn't seem helpful at all, Or more broadly, if you're in a situation like maybe you're listening to an impromptu speech and you're thinking, how is this ever going to help me in my life? Then just think of me and how I turned all these little bits of information into a for-your information speech, and I hope you learned something today. Thank you.
One more loud round of applause for all of our participants today. We're going to change the schedule this evening, and hopefully word has gotten out to participants and coaches, but in order to allow us time to make sure that all of our information is correct and that the certificates reflect that information about the finals results, we're going to send you to dinner early, and then we'll come back into this room for the awards ceremony. And so at that time, we invite all people that have come to watch the finals back. You're welcome to come back here. That'll happen at 7 o'clock. Dinner will start about 5:45, and that's over in the MPB 1, 2, and 3. I'd ask coaches and teams if you could do this for us. Our B&G crew, that's our buildings and grounds, work tirelessly at our school. I'm sure that they do the same at yours. But so that they can get out of here at a reasonable time, if you could go back to your homerooms at this time and sort of gather things, just kind of tidy up a little bit. They'll be putting those rooms back into the shape that they need to be in for Monday morning, and we'd like them to not have to come back tomorrow and do that. But just kind of look for, I guess, odds and ends. This might be the last chance to do that. You're welcome to take those things with you over to the banquet area, and then we can lock that up, or you can bring it back here. Either way, it won't be in the homerooms after that time that we go over to the banquet, okay? So 5:45 is the new banquet time, and then we'll be back in here for the awards ceremony right at 7 o'clock. All right? Thank you so much.